Welcome, everyone. Today we're diving into a rather explosive historical inquiry about whether Paul, as we know him, might actually have been invented after a catastrophic Jewish revolt.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty bold question indeed. So, we're talking about a timeline shift that could fundamentally alter our understanding of early Christianity, right?
Exactly. It's like, um, imagine if Paul's letters, those key texts that reject circumcision and Jewish law, were actually penned after the violent events of 132 CE rather than in the 50s.
Yes.
That little twist really flips the narrative.
So essentially, instead of seeing Paul as a rebellious Pharisee turned apostle early on, we might actually be looking at a survival tool of a faith desperately clinging to life after a brutal Roman crackdown.
Right. Picture this. After the last desperate war between the Jews and Rome, where the Messiah Bar Kokhba led a rebellion that ended in utter devastation, Judaism itself was shattered. And then comes a Christianity that no longer reads as Jewish at all.
It's wild to think about how the Roman Emperor Hadrian played a key role here by criminalizing Jewish customs like circumcision, isn't it?
Absolutely. Hadrian's decree, specifically banning circumcision, declaring it as mutilation, essentially cut off the core identity for Jews, since circumcision was, the covenant sign.
Yes.
You can almost see it as an attempt to erase an entire religious identity.
And in that context, the renaming of Jerusalem to Aelia Capitolina, and even the erection of a temple to Jupiter on the ruins of the Second Temple, must have been, exceedingly provocative.
Exactly. Cassius Dio, that good old Roman historian, even recorded that the Jews went to war because they were forbidden to mutilate their genitals. It was more than just cultural suppression, it was an annihilation of a covenant, a literal erasure.
Right. It's fascinating, almost tragic, how that decisive moment forced a break from tradition. Emerging from all this, a brand new Christian narrative surfaces, one that doesn't require the old Jewish rites.
Yes, exactly. Here enters Paul. His letters, especially passages like Galatians 5:2, openly reject circumcision. If you let yourselves be circumcised, Christ will be of no value to you at all. That's a radical departure from a traditional Pharisee viewpoint.
Indeed. But someone might say, wait, isn't it possible that Paul's stance could be simply a theological evolution rather than an invented persona?
That's a fair point, but listen. Scholars like Hermann Detering, Robert Price, and Nina Livesay suggest that Paul's letters were either written or heavily redacted in the mid-2nd century. So it's, like they were reworked in the aftermath of the Bar Kokhba catastrophe, when being Jewish was politically, and sometimes literally, fatal.
Right, so his ancient persona might have been a sort of mask created by a 2nd century Christian movement, all designed to distance themselves from Judaism after that severe destruction.
Precisely. It's like they needed a safe identity. A Christianity that wouldn't provoke Roman wrath by clinging to outlawed Jewish customs.
Exactly. And if we think about it, this reimagined Paul becomes the perfect instrument for a movement that needed to be anti-Torah, anti-circumcision, and, well, frankly, anti-Jewish, in order to survive under Roman rule.
Yes. And then there's Marcion, who, around 140 CE, not only championed Paul, but also essentially built an entire Christian Bible based solely on his writings, completely leaving out the Torah.
Absolutely. I find it intriguing, and a bit unsettling, that later church fathers like Justin Martyr used Bar Kokhba's defeat as a theological sign that Jesus was the true Messiah. They even labeled Bar Kokhba as a deceiver or a false Christ.
Yeah. It's like hindsight theology. It's as if the early church, mired in trauma, reinterpreted catastrophic events to fit a narrative that would appease Roman sensibilities.
So, if this is the case, Paul isn't really the audacious rebel from the 50s we might have believed him to be, but rather a later construction designed to sustain a faith under existential threat.
Exactly. It's like, his voice in the New Testament might not be the genuine voice of a Jewish reformer, but the echo of a desperate, traumatized movement trying to carve out a niche in an empire that had literally erased
Yep.
its former self.
One thing that's been bugging me, though, don't you think that, while this theory is provocative, there's a risk of oversimplifying the transformation from Judaism to Christianity? Not every shift in doctrine can be chalked up solely to political survival.
That's a critical point. I mean, sure, there's so much evidence leaning towards a post-revolt recontextualization of Paul's writings, but history is messy and, maybe there were multiple streams at work. Still, the abrupt rejection of key Jewish rituals right after such a crippling loss makes a strong case.
Exactly. And by erasing the personal and historical memory of monumental events like the destruction of the temple in 70 CE or the Bar Kokhba rebellion, it sends a clear signal about the priorities of this emerging Christian movement.
Right on. It's as if the omission isn't accidental. It might be deliberate. The silence about these tragedies in Paul's letters is like a red line drawn in the sand, a way to construct a new identity that was, safe from Roman persecution.
I get that. This whole idea really challenges our traditional understanding of early Christian origins, doesn't it? It kind of feels like a blend of historical trauma, political maneuvering, and, theological reinvention.
Absolutely. It opens up questions about how religious narratives can be reshaped by, historical realities. Think about it, as if it's like a survival mechanism. When your entire identity is under threat, you have to adapt.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to rewrite your story.
And that rewriting, in turn, influences how faith is transmitted for centuries. The fact that Marcion's version of Paul gained traction only underscores this adaptive, almost pragmatic side of early Christianity.
Yes, it's, fascinating how a traumatic epoch can lead to, like, a complete overhaul of belief systems. It's not just about doctrines, it's about survival, identity, and the willingness to discard old symbols like circumcision that once defined your people.
Absolutely. And that gives us a kind of bittersweet perspective on history. You're not only witnessing the birth of a new religion, but also the painful erosion of a once vibrant cultural identity.
Precisely. And it forces us to ask, if we look closely at these texts and events, might we find that even the sacred writings were malleable, shaped by a context of extreme duress and political survival?
Yep, that's a deep thought. It almost makes you wonder how many other foundational texts might have hidden layers of historical revision lying underneath, doesn't it?
It really does. And, this whole reimagining of Paul as a product of a post-revolt trauma is a prime example of how history is not just about facts, but the narratives we build around those facts to survive and move forward.
Indeed. In the end, while the theory is controversial, it's a reminder that our understanding of history is always evolving, sometimes in ways that challenge the most cherished beliefs.
Absolutely, and it's a fascinating journey into how history, memory, and survival can shape a whole religion. Thanks for digging into these revelations with me today.
Right, absolutely.